Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the session on cyber attacks to cyber pandemic. What are the strategies and solutions for civil society organizations? As a first address, we will have Mr. Marco Teixeira, who is from the United Nations representative on drugs and crime, address us shortly. He is actually the South Asia representative for the UNODC, and he has led program development, implementation, partnership building, and resource mobilization efforts in various positions, including program coordinator, head of the office in Mozambique, in Malawi, in Maputo, senior program officer, and with the Division of Treaty Affairs in Vienna, leading the global program for the implementation of the Doha Declaration. So we'd like to request his address be played.
Good afternoon to all. As a regional representative from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime for South Asia, I'm delighted to join you all today in this very important C20 summit meeting. Unfortunately, due to other work obligations, and I cannot be with you in person, but I want to share a few ideas and a few reflections from our side as UNODC. UNODC welcomes India's leadership and presidency of the G20, which brings together also not only just governments, but also persons from the civil society, young people and institutions. Together we are the drivers of change and global change. In this context, I'm extremely happy to support the C20 initiative of today, and I look forward to our continuous cooperation and collaboration. I use also the opportunity to thank the C20 chair, Dr. Krishnari and Amrita Vishwa, for convening us all today, and obviously to have and continue these fruitful discussions. Dear colleagues of panel, speakers, participants, as you know, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime is a particular and specific part of the UN system with a specific mandate, and I would say also a broad mandate that is linked with addressing the drug problem globally, support also the member states to address organized crime, terrorism, corruption, to strengthen and promote peace, security, and rule of law, but also promoting the health and the well-being of the communities that we work with to shield them from the use of illicit substances and obviously other parts linked with the functioning of the criminal justice responses to crime. For the last years, UNODC has been at the forefront, I would say, of working not only with government, law enforcement, criminal justice practitioners, but also health institutions, business corporations, and also, very important, civil society. Together we can build a safe and peaceful, and I would say healthier environment and world. Some of the issues that we focus our attention and our technical assistance are linked with human trafficking, smuggling of persons, drug trafficking, drug use, maritime crime, criminal justice responses, wildlife trafficking, among other topics that we work with the member states links with our specific mandate and the provisions of the conventions that we are entitled to guard and support the member states. Of course, from our focus areas, more and more now, countering cybercrime and strengthening cybersecurity and online safety comes as a forefront of our priorities also. How we do this? We try to bring together countries, developing and implementing policies, leading cutting-edge research and trend analysis together with member states and the private sector, and providing also evidence-based technical solutions to governments to strengthen cooperation. And of course, continue to work at the ground level with the communities and also youth and the civil society. As you can imagine, all of these are critical elements that are constantly evolving, changing. Our response must also change and adjust to the realities. And of course, we need to continue to improve collectively to fulfill our responsibility to use the cyberspace as a driver for development, but also to be a safer space. Dear participants, I see these forums as essential of part of this thinking collectively through solutions and empowering solutions implementation. Today's cybersecurity has become a critical issue of our time. The advancement of technology has made easier to all of us to connect, to communicate with each other, but also has brought new threats that we need to be aware of. There are different aspects of those threats: security, safety, resilience, how we secure our cyberspace, counter cybercrime or cyber-enabled crime, how can we protect users on building resilience when they use the IT in the cyberspace. Technology for empowerment, how we leverage technologies to empower users, look at big data, enable affordable and secure access that build and bridge digital gaps. Those are questions important to pose to ourselves, including artificial intelligence, how we leverage AI for public good and address concerns of privacy and ethics, also an important question and reflection. Transparency, how we can strengthen public trust in the cyberspace and counter misinformation. These are important questions that, for sure, cyber criminals are continuing to target anyone that is at any time using the internet. And of course, in all of that picture of threats and opportunities, both individual and the society needs to uphold preventive measures and responses. Civil society, in our opinion, can play a more active role in promoting cybersecurity and safe online practices. UNODC and the G20, I would assume, recognize the need to increase cooperation among countries to combat cyber threats and also civil society to contribute to those efforts. We have, for instance, children who are failing and being victimized online for online bullying, harassment, and obviously this can lead to significant health issues and mental health issues. It is important to enable children to learn how to report these incidents, how to protect themselves from such incidents, and actually to be using the benefits of the platforms and not being victimized for its weakness spots, I would say. There are also payment frauds, identity threats. Cyber criminals obviously often use phishing attacks to steal personal information like credit card numbers, bank account details, social security numbers, and it's endless opportunities that cyber criminals try to use online. These are important information that can be used to steal individual, I would say, assets and money and commit identity theft. It is for us important to continue to promote awareness around those topics so that people can be cautious about sharing their personal details online. There is also another element, the darknet, and used for illegal activities such as buying and selling drugs, weapons, and so on different commodities and illicit practices that can take place on the dark web or the hidden web. Young people and civil society should be aware of the dangers of accessing darknet, and it is unfortunately a breeding ground for criminal activities. And of course, there are several consequences for the governments, for the security and the stability of countries. My dear friends, allow me to call you like this, and part of our reflection is also how can we together make civil society contribute towards strengthening cybersecurity and addressing those issues. Some of them I have mentioned before. Let me, I would say, put a few reflections on. First, there is a need to increase awareness and education on cybersecurity. Civil society organizations can conduct awareness campaigns and training programs to educate people on safe online practices, including the use, for instance, strong passwords, the importance of software updates, and how to identify and report cyber threats. Secondly, there is a need to increase cooperation among civil society organizations, the governments, the private sector to combat cyber threats. Civil society organizations can work with law enforcement agencies and other stakeholders to identify and address some of those cybersecurity threats. Thirdly, there is a need to increase investment in cybersecurity research and development, civil society organizations can collaborate with academic institutions and the private sector to develop new technologies and strategies to tackle cyber security threats and cyber threats. Lastly, there is a need to increase international cooperation to combat cyber threats. The G20 has recognized the importance of increasing cooperation among the member states, and of course, this is another area that needs continuous reflection and empowerment of international cooperation. So we can share information and best practices among ourselves and among the member states. In this direction, I'm pleased to note that the Civil 20 Shares Leadership is developing the Global Internet Governance, Digital Empowerment and Security Alliance that hopefully is being launched very soon. I understand this is an initiative for an inclusive, open, non-discriminatory and fair digital society spearheaded by the Civil C20 Working Group on Technology, Security and Transparency. And of course, there's also coped the adherence from the different countries. So congratulations for that. UNODC looks forward to continue to streamline cooperation with this initiative. And of course, I wish all of you the continuation of our successful discussions. And of course, together, united, we can actually upscale our responses and address some of those threats. Thank you very much and a fruitful continuation of your discussion. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Samir Patil. I am a senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation based in Mumbai, working at the intersection of national security and technology with a focus on cybersecurity. We just heard from Mr. Texiera about the rise in cyber attacks, and in the morning we heard from Lieutenant General Rajesh Pant, India's National Cybersecurity Coordinator, how geopolitical rivalries are spilling into the cyberspace, how there is a problem of attribution when it comes to cyber attacks, and how states are also now engaging non-state actors when it comes to cyber attacks. But if you look at particularly the civil society organizations, Microsoft's report called as Digital Defense Report, which was published in 2020, had noted that civil society organizations were the most targeted group at around 32% of attacks between July 2019 to June 2020. The Digital Protection Rights Organization called as Access Now has also noted that account compromise, malware, censorship, denial of service, web-based attacks, harassment, and communication surveillance have been the major cyber threats targeting the civil society organizations. So clearly, there is a growing need to adopt new strategies and invest in resources in protecting the civil society organizations from the cyber attacks. And to discuss these issues, I have an excellent panel of academics, scholars, and practitioners. And I'm sure we'll have a very interesting conversation. So let me just introduce quickly the panel. On my left is Mr. Mika Weiss from Minister of Finance, Israel. Cybersecurity leader and advisor, Mr. Weiss has devoted about 4 decades to cybersecurity. He has served for 26 years in the Israeli Defense Force as a cybersecurity officer, 10 years as the Chief Information Security Officer at Mirazi Tehafut Bank, Israel, and 6 years at the Israel's Ministry of Finance as a cyber expert. Mr. Weiss is accomplished at representing the strategic needs, roadmaps, and cyber risks for the financial sector, and he has insights on information sharing and defensive values gained from experience in the field that has equipped him with expertise at conducting exercises at all levels of governance. Welcome. On my right is Ms. Amrita Shetty from Synergia Foundation. She is the Chief Operating Officer there. And for a decade before, she was at Synergia Biosciences. Now, Synergia Foundation is a strategic think tank based in Bangalore that works on real-time primary information to pursue high-quality and impartial research, drawing on a global network of resources to offer the most comprehensive analysis and creative solutions. The team at Synergia, including Ms. Shetty, are leading experts in government, industry, and academia from all over the world, providing high-quality analysis and recommendations on public policy issues, which enables companies to protect their businesses against disruptive change. Welcome. On my far left is Mr. Rajat Sen from FSISAC. He's an experienced InfoSec and IT risk management leader who helps organizations become risk aware and manage their risk exposure associated with information security, technology, and compliance. He is the founder and director of Discerning Consulting Services and Regional Director of Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center, where he collaborates across public and private organizations in the banking, financial services, and insurance sector to reduce cyber risk and build cyber resilience, and offers cybersecurity and management consulting services. Welcome. On my far right is Mr. Parmar Manoj Kumar, who is the CEO of AI Shield by Bosch. He is an experienced senior technologist with a demonstrated history of working in the emerging technology, deep technology, and automotive engineering industry. He is responsible for designing, leading, and driving technology-oriented strategy for the organization. Mr. Manoj Kumar initiated the Bosch Startup Accelerator Program with focus on the domain of energy with blockchain. He is a mentor and jurist for various startup events and also visiting faculty member and guest speaker on technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Manoj, welcome. And finally, I have Professor Krishnashree Achyutan. She is the Dean of Postgraduate Programs at Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. She heads the Center for Cybersecurity Systems and Networks and Amrita Technology Business Incubator, called as Amrita TBI, at the Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. She is the Associate Director of Indo-US and International Initiatives at Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. She has over 32 plus patents and 130 plus publications to her credit. Dr. Krishnashree is an ardent researcher with multidisciplinary interest and holds a PhD degree from Clarkson University in New York, United States. And her areas of interest lie in cybersecurity and governance, mathematical modeling of systems, cybersecurity policy, IoT security, public safety, innovation, education technologies, and entrepreneurship. She has played an active role in several strategic initiatives for the Government of India and, of course, the driving force for the C20s, today's C20 summits. Ma'am, thank you. So with that introduction, let me just open the panel for the discussion. What I'll do is that I will give one guiding question for the panelists, and they can give 5-6 minutes initial remarks. So my question is, what can we do to develop cyber resilience in the civil society organizations, and how can we secure their participation in the development of cybersecurity policies by the government? Something which Mr. Teixeira also talked about. I'll start with Mr. Vika.
Thanks. First of all, I think it's very important that CISOs will understand. I'm sure they understand, but let's say it again. For my opinion, they are the same like all other organizations. They are not unique. They are not protected by themselves. They need to protect as a bank or an insurance company or an oil company. It's never mind. They are part of the targeted. And if so, I think there is a few ideas that I would like to share with the CISO CEO that they will take care about it. First, I think it's very important to establish some kind of community that like-minded CISOs, and if you can parallel it to the private market, so there is a community for the banking, community for the insurance company, community for oil company, energy company, etc., because they have very special, unique expertise on what they're doing and how they can protect themselves. So community, it's the first step that I suggest to do. The second one is to see what the trait is for each organization. Some of them have private details, some of them deal with cash, some of them give services to citizens, and each of them need to understand what is the sensitive information on our system they have and map them. The second one is to give someone the responsibility to be in charge of cybersecurity. It's not enough that the IT guy or somebody, even they are very, very talented, there is somebody that he is responsible for the cybersecurity on the organization. He can do something else, but it's his responsibility to understand what the danger is, what the system are, who can break to where, and what should be done on the organization to mitigate the problem. Of course, each CISO need to give some sources. Most of the time it will be financial sources, to buy equipment, to buy software, to buy hardware, to buy expert, to buy knowledge, and to protect themselves. It's very important to have a resource dedicated to cybersecurity. If we move to some kind of technical or not methodological recommendation, I think the first one that I will recommend to CISOs is to backup. Not only backup, and not only once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times. It depends each organization. But the most important, for my opinion, it's after you backup, practice that you can come up and bring up your data back to organization minimum once in a quarter. And for all the system and from all the database, et cetera, because it's never ended, and I met tons of organizations that on the day that it's happened to them, it's not working. So practice it, please. Another recommendation is to monitor the net all the time. Not only the net, also all the equipment around the network and all the identifying servers, whatever it's needed part of the organization, you need to monitor it and to see what happened. And if there is a cyber attack happened, if you monitor it, maybe you can see something happened on your network. So monitoring is very important. You know, criminal, they are not defined between bank, oil company, or CISOs. It's the same for them. They do it for money most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And each organization need to be protected. Of course, patches, it's mandatory. It's not a question. All time, every day, patch all the system from end to end, from 0 to 100. And the last one is to prepare for a crisis. Each organization needs to write for himself the organization crisis preparation and what will be done when it's happened, and practice it, of course, because if not, nobody will know what to do. I think that this is the most important thing to do on day one, and I can write a book about the other one, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Amrita?
Hello. Yeah. So, you know, as we like it or not, today the technology has become an integral part of our day-to-day lives. And as we embrace the digital world, I think we should also, be ready for the risk that comes with it. Now, how much risk are we willing to take is up to us, right? So, and in this case, we don't even know who the adversaries are. So therefore, it's essential to protect what we value most in life. Be it our bank details, our email passwords, loved ones' pictures. So protect rather than expose it. So I feel at an individual level, we should, sanitize our digital. So few things is registering temptations. That's one of the most important thing, because be cautious of the messages claiming, you've won a lottery or you've, offering an unrealistic reward. The second thing is buying time in this digital world is very important. So taking time to pause and think is another important thing. Using VPNs, another, if you're working from home, this is an important thing, virtual private networks. Backing up important files, especially I do research in healthcare, and it's very important to work in standalone computers, especially when you're working something related to intellectual property. And if you're working from an office, always make sure that you unplug your internet as you leave your office desk. Ensuring up-to-date data, antivirus softwares, educating your family, because today I know my 2-year-old is also glued onto a YouTube, so it's very important to start and educate them at an early stage. Regularly, updating your privacy settings, including your passwords, take a check on that. So these are the crucial aspect of digital hygiene. So minimizing your footprints is very important, because today, you have to be aware of every email, online search, or social media post that leaves a trail or personal data that can be challenging, right? And it's very hard to erase once you're out there. So we must be cautious and mindful of the information we share. I also remember of an incident that happened in Bangalore with the BESCOM, which is a Bangalore Municipality Electrical Supply Limited. So they sent out a message to most of their customers saying, we'll cut off your power supply because of the payment issue. And most of them bought that, and their bank accounts were compromised. And there was this one gentleman, Air Force officer, who had come to our office mentioning this. He said, I immediately went to the legal office to take action. And the police officer said, we've had one too many of this, So he came back very disappointed, not giving up, and then he was mentioning this to our foundation. And then we spoke to a newspaper organization. They took it up, they wrote it, and there was a whole news about it. That's when people woke up. So that's very important to make sure. This is exactly what I said, buy time. So this gentleman didn't believe. He said if the power supply were to be cut off, they wouldn't do it immediately, right? So he bought time. He went to the police officer to inform this. So it's very important at an individual level to sanitize and make sure that we are up to date with digital,
Thank you. I think you raised two important questions. One is the issue of cyber hygiene and how it is important for our kids, and not just kids, also the general users to understand the cybersecurity practices, but also the issue about the regulatory capacity of the law enforcement agencies, because that itself is because if they are going to be the first responders to cyber crimes, then their capacity also needs to be exponentially expanded to deal with these kind of threats. Thank you so much. Rajat, if I may come to you.
Sure. So one, if I might just add to what you just said, there's a helpline called 1930, which one should call right away. The other is cybercrime.gov.in, where you can report a cybercrime. And the third is, as soon as you're aware of any financial transaction occurring, there is something called the golden hour. I call it the golden 30 minutes, because if 30 minutes have passed, too much time is gone. If you can notify your bank, by law they are required to respond. So they can stop that transaction, or at the minimum, you can stop that money from flowing out of the account. But once those 30 minutes have passed, there is very little anybody else can do after that. So I would encourage all of you to remember these three resources. 1930, where you can log a complaint and say, hey, I've been a victim of fraud, this is what has occurred. Cybercrime.gov.in, where you can go and report a cybercrime. And if it's a financial payment related issue, call your bank. If you have an account manager that you typically work with, a relationship manager, call them. Hound them till they respond to you. Because those 30 minutes are critical. And once those 30 minutes are gone, the money's vanished. With that, I'll respond to the question. So when I think of cyber resilience, let me first segregate and make a distinction between cybersecurity, operational resilience, or cyber resilience, how it is often kind of mixed up, these two terms, and then what I would call resilience from the perspective of business operations. And when I think of civil society organizations, I think the cyber resilience component that is often missed is because they are missing the cybersecurity component. And I think Mika did a fantastic job of covering all of the aspects, that you must know what it is in your organization that is valuable, that you wish to protect. Those are your assets. Once you know your assets, you must know what is your risk exposure associated with it. Once you know your risk exposure, then you have a decision point, that what is my risk appetite as an organization? What is the maximum loss I'm willing to accept? Because that is going to determine what your strategy for security and resilience is going to be, right? Now, when we talk about resilience, I'll try and define it so that we are all working off the same baseline. Resilience is the ability of an organization to return to business as usual after an event occurs. The event could be any event that is disrupting normal business activity. The cause of that activity could originate from cyber, could originate from a user error, could originate from a business process that is faulty in the sense that it might not have considered a condition that has occurred. And now the business process doesn't know how to proceed, or the people delivering that process don't know how to proceed. To me, that is resilience. Historically, there was a distinction between business operations and business continuity, and technology-driven, I would say, recovery, which was focused more on, is the equipment that I had that is now not available, now available and running for consumption. Nobody ever looked at the second piece of that, that if the technology is up and running, are the associated users who are supposed to use it also able to use these systems? And are they in a position to leverage it or not? So today, when we talk about cyber resilience, it's a combination of those last few aspects, which is if there is a business process and that business process is disrupted, what is my ability to respond to it, recover from it, and come back to business as usual? So that means if a system is impacted, is the system now available again? And if it is available, are the associated users who are supposed to be using that system also in a position to use that system and deliver to that business process or the business outcome that was desired? When we talk of civil society organizations, the greatest challenge often occurs is that one, when the infrastructure was set up, it was set up with the sole intention or focus on pure business operations. Security may or may not have figured in the original design and architecture. And whenever security is an afterthought, it is a challenge to implement it. It's like anything, right? If you decide to get a pair of clothes stitched, and then you want to get another pair stitched while you're still wearing the one you are, you don't take measurements over and above everything, right? You use the measurements that were originally taken so that things fit you right. It's the same way with security. It's no different. You have to measure right and cut once. And in the same manner, resilience is an extension of that. Within civil societies, I think but hospice care in particular, I would call out. And this is for all civil organizations that deal with any sort of critical systems where there is a life at stake. It could be an organization that is providing care and support for victims of domestic violence. It could be a hospice care that provides certain neonatal capabilities or an ICU or some sort of surgery capabilities. In these instances, that entire unit needs to be segregated and treated separately from the rest of the organization. And the reason you want to do that is that the cost of basic cyber hygiene and resilience for that portion of the organization is going to be much higher than the rest of the organization. It doesn't make sense to use the same sweeping cost of care and apply it across the organization, right? So I'll stop with that.
Thank you for clearly laying down that concept of cyber resilience. And your point about attacks on the hospice care, I think we clearly saw that in the case of the ransomware incident at All India Institute of Medical Sciences in November and December last year. If I come to Manoj and talk about some of these issues.
Thanks. I think the gentleman and lady did a fantastic job. Nothing more to say on top of that. They made my job more difficult, but I'll try to do the best. For the civil CSOs mainly, I see them a little differently, right? They are always 24/7, 365 open, right? So I consider them as a part of a critical infrastructure. Let me start with that. And then there are two parts of critical infrastructure. One is that deals with users common people and one which deals with the rest of the businesses and users, right? So the power sector is B2B kind of in a sector of critical infrastructure. The healthcare is B2C kind of in a thing where the users are there. Now when you do this dissection, the 4 different realities emerge and it needs to be handled very differently. I think Rajat covered that the neonatal care is separate, but similarly imagine that attack happening, a cybersecurity attack happening on the power grid. We are living the die-hard fire sale scenario.
And we have already seen that.
Yes, we have already seen it, but not many people really, talk about it because it's not impacting everyone directly. There is an indirect impact, right? So this is the 4 quadrants that I want to talk about, and I want to talk very specifically in different aspects. Now, if I look at to the user-centric things, right, of that aspect of critical infrastructure, IBM's data breach report which came out, which says that India is the 3rd impacted country, right? But if you look at the G20 together, 95% countries are impacted because of this, and 2 sectors which stands out are healthcare and banking. Both have been talked about. So now in that critical infrastructure for user-centric, when you talk this thing, all of this applies. Close your eyes and imagine that you are sitting in the thermal power station, running a 40-year-old instrumentations now which are connected to digital. And every time it was there, it was mainly about operating only. Business operations was very critical at that point of time. What about resiliency today? The OT security, operational technology security, the newer generations technology which are coming in, helping this power grids, helping lot of other like dams, water dams, right? Imagine something happening to them. What are we talking about then? So when you look from this 2 different perspectives, the different realities emerge, and the suggestions that I have is that one of that which was covered was identify your inventories or asset the inventories, identify the risk which is there, but more often this risk are figment of imaginations at many of the places. And what really happens is that when it goes for the next round of implementation or finding in a technology solutions, more often they are not available or they are so costly. And the civil organizations then really suffer, saying that what they are supposed to do now, they have identified. It's not that they don't know. It's very easy to identify, but now what to take care, next thing. So one of the alternative approaches that we have seen that some of the countries have adopted is that run something called as cyber attack simulations, a breach simulations, right? To really differentiate what is reality versus what is not reality. And then when you run that particular breach attack simulations or any kind of those simulations, you really identify what is the most important thing and then start protecting them. The normal human way of just putting, that risk is high, these attacks are high and all of these things, they're no longer going to work. It requires a lot of expertise, requires a lot of time as well. On the other hand, you can engage somebody who is experts in the breach attack simulation, give them the law of the land, and then they will be able to figure it out that what needs to be done. This is the starting point. A most cost-effective, most realistic way to figure it out what are the real risks that your organizations or the CSOs really have. And I think for me, that is the only one suggestion that I want to give on top of all of the suggestions which are given. Just interject that point. It's and engage the experts. More often people see in this organizations that we know the domain, we are running it for 40 years. This is not possible. If that wouldn't have been possible, how come all of the attacks are happening? Why are we not opening our eyes to the data which is there and then telling that yes, it is possible. You are just not equipped to understand these newer ways of attacking it. So engage with the people who really are expert and then go from there. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, what you mentioned about the power sector, I think I'll take it to the next level and say the cascading effects of the attack on the power sector, right? Other critical infrastructure sectors which are dependent on the power sector. Yes. And we saw that in the case of this power grid failure in 2012 in Delhi, yes, when Delhi Metro actually ran out of the, the power backup, and then they had to stop the services. Okay, finally, Dr. Krishnashri.
Thank you, Samir. Wonderful to hear all the feedback from all of our panelists. I'm just going to take a slightly different approach and maybe just share a little bit of our own findings of what the state of civil society organizations from our own interactions in these past several months. So we were actually surprised to see that many civil society organizations are barely or very minute minutely even aware of the types of things that we are talking about in this panel. They are advocates and they're very passionate about many things that they're working for. However, they have no idea about their own safety and security. That is one. And I think that what led from just writing policies or for the G20 countries really started out that way, and after interaction with these several civil society organizations from 90 countries, what we really concluded was we needed to do much, much more than policy recommendations. And I think the solution I see are two different directions. One, that civil society organizations themselves are potentially the solution, because they do work on the ground. If they can take this up as a cause to be able to empower others, then that would make it far, far more impactful than governments alone trying to do this. That was one. And that's why we actually launched 2 initiatives today. One was this GLIDES Alliance, which was for global internet governance and digital empowerment and security alliance, and the other was a tactics platform to be able to educate these civil society organizations. So both of those were actually results of the fact that civil society organizations, like Samir mentioned, are far behind in their understanding, approach, knowledge, and implementation of anything close to security. The second is we always think about, trying to protect ourselves, assuming that there's hardly anything we can do for the future. I see a whole nother opportunity, which is to be able to really look at what we are educating our younger generation with. While there is a lot of important emphasis on computational thinking, artificial intelligence, etc., as necessary skills that our younger generation needs, I equally feel the importance of integrating ethics. Now, we can debate on what is truly ethics. I know Sundar is here. But I feel strongly that the students and at least the curriculum and many of these missions that really provide, the guidance and policy advisory for education hardly think about integration of ethics. And I feel unless we do that, we can't really think about a future where we will have young individuals automatically know what the right thing to do is in case they are influenced otherwise. So those are the 2 things, and in fact that's where I feel Amrita has been really focused on looking at education not as an exercise of just delivering knowledge or imparting knowledge, but how do you really develop into holistic individuals that can think on their own, that can actually look at problems and look at potentially solutions, not to just solve a present problem, but also what its impact would be on themselves and on others. So those were the 2 points I wanted to mention.
Thank you so much, and thank you for those initiatives that you unveiled in the morning. Now, if I come to Mr. Weiss, all the things that we discussed just now, when it comes to Israel, do things happen differently with regard to all these issues that we discussed?
Of course not. We are not different from all other countries around the world. Cyber attack happened every day, everywhere, all kinds, DDoS attack, ransomware attack, data leak, crime, fraud. What happened all over the world happened for us, of course. I think if I can add on it, on top of the subjects that on a country level, first of all, we are looking on the problem or the topic on 4 levels. One, it's the organization level. Second, it's the sectorial level. And third is the national level, and the fourth is the international level. And all these four levels should be connected, because each organization need to take care about themselves. The sector need to first understand what happened on the sector, and if I'm talking about the financial stability for now, but it's good for all the sectorial, including CISOs, and the stability of the sector is very, very important. And if there is a regulator, if there is a coordinator, he should know what is the situation across the sector. And in the national level, of course, each country need to understand and have the ability to collect information, collect data, be in contact with all the organizations that imported for the country level, and understand first if there is cyber attacks happen, if there is any economical or financial impact on the national level. So the country can act and react to this cyber attack. And of course, I think the international level, it's something new for all of the world, not only for us. It's to see how countries can be first share information, then share knowledge, and when it's happened, what countries should talk about it when cyber attacks happened on the national level or international level. And in the financial sector, it's very, very important because all over the world, financial ecosystem is one. So the slogan for the conference, it's happened on the financial ecosystem for a long time. It's one word and one system and one ecosystem. And we try to be the light for the financial ecosystem. So it's also connected to the slogan. And you can see also there is a need to look on the domino effect, that if something happened, you can see the example, it's not come from cyber attack, it's come from a financial reason, but not only financial reason. You can see the SVP bank in Silicon Valley. What happened? So I don't say that it's not happened from, the reason wasn't cyber. And, but part of the reason was a fake news, with everybody go on the net, on the WhatsApp group, and said, hey, something happened on the SVB, we'll take the money out. And they crash in 2 days. So there is a very, very unique approach that organizations need to take care about all the traits that part of the organization, if it's CISO, as I said before, it should be unique to them, understand what the trait is, what can influence the organization, if it's fake news, if it's networks, if it's systems, and be prepared. And as I said in the beginning, we are not different from all over the world, and the opposite, we are part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Amrita, if I can come to you. Now, if you look at the advancements in the digital technologies and cyberspace, clearly they have outstripped, the pace of advancement has outstripped the legal frameworks and the regulatory frameworks. But from your experience in the healthcare and the medical sector, where there is a constant debate about ethics and accountability, what lessons can we learn for the broader field?
Right. Now, we spoke about this briefly as well, where you mentioned about AIMS. It seems like we can't go a day without hearing another hospital falling victim to cyber attacks, right? And the reason is that the personal health information, which is PHI, is more valued in the black market. I guess you can fetch up to $353, whereas your PII, which is your personally identified information, such as your credit card details, your email passwords, and etc., that can only fetch $1 to $2. So that is the difference between your PHI to PII. And why not? The cyber attacks are attracted to, hack hospitals being one of the major targets. And we've seen AIMS, we were disrupted for several days, be it admission, registration, billing, prescription, all of that was in standstill. Similarly, in Bangalore, Nimans, one of the major hospitals, was also hacked. So we are reading about it of late. I think it's important that we have some regulations in place. I know the government is working very hard in deploying a rule called as Disha, which is going to be implemented soon pan-India, which will be similar to the counterpart in the US, which we have as Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So I'm looking forward for such kind of acts to come in. So I feel it's very important for us to protect the robust, applications in network security. And one more important thing, I think, as the technology is going forward, quantum encryption, quantum computing is one more important thing I feel banks, hospitals, or any critical infrastructure should implement. Using quantum encryption, I feel, people can still hack, but what they can do is they cannot decrypt the data. So that's very important. And the US, I guess, have already mandated the government saying all the critical infrastructure should be quantum proofed. So I think these are the few legal aspects that we should take on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Rajat, we were discussing this over lunch, the challenge of information sharing, especially in the financial sector. How significant is that challenge? Because we do, see there is a greater need for information sharing, and we assume, that entities which are repetitive victims of these kind of cyber attacks will actually have more proclivity to do the information sharing, but they don't, right?
Right. So this is a slightly controversial topic, but I'll take a shot anyway. So let me start with the positives. So I'm part of this organization, like I said earlier, called FSISAC. And the whole premise of this organization is that we need to come together, share information, share experiences, learn from each other, and grow together. That's the foundation. And one of the most successful parts of this organization has been the Global Intelligence Office, which collects threat intelligence from all of our members, enriches it, adds some more attributes to it, and then pushes it back to the member network. Now, when I look at the global financial services network, probably about 75 to 80% of this global financial services network is already part of FSISAC. I first got associated with FSISAC back in 2010. And at the time, this process that I'm talking about was fairly manual, and it took a lot of effort to actually gather all of the data, remove attribution, and then send it back out. But there was still a number of people that did it, right? And you could see from how long they've been part of FSISAC, how much more they shared, right? Because the longer they stayed and they saw the value of the information that was coming to them, they realized that this is the only way this can work, right? So part of the solution was in onboarding people and letting them just see how effective this process is, right? I'll pick on some of the ransomware that was fairly prevalent at between, say, 2016 to 2018. And a lot of that ransomware was actually moving from the east to the west. And some of those were stopped by the time they hit mid-Europe, because this network had already received that information, it was shared across, and those attacks did not continue further. They did impact some of the other sectors, but the financial services network was not as hard hit because of the information sharing. So one of my jobs today is to talk to financial institutions and tell them that if you're already a member, please share information, because if you don't participate, it doesn't count for much, right? This is ultimately, you are the benefactor of the information you choose to share, okay? But I will say in Southeast Asia in particular, I think part of this is cultural and part of this is how our regulatory systems operate, right? You're penalized for telling anybody that you made a mistake. And because of this, people are very hesitant to share. I mean, pick any organization, forget financial services for a minute and pick any organization. If you choose to say that, hey, I want to share some information about an internal incident outside the organization, you'll suddenly become aware of the legal and compliance team that exists in your organization, whom you would have otherwise never spoken to. But you will become acutely aware of their presence and their complete hold and command over you as an entity within the organization, right? So these things have happened because of, like I said, partly the culture and partly the regulatory environment. But I cannot stress on the importance of us coming together to fight it. If we do not come together, we will fail. Nobody can individually solve this problem. We must come together, we must share information, we must learn from each other. It is the only way forward.
Good. Thank you so much. Manoj, if I can come to you. Let me throw some catchwords. AI, quantum, okay, blockchain, deepfake. How do you look at these emerging technologies' implications for the cybersecurity field as such, particularly in the context of the CSOs?
All of them are hypes. But there is reality behind it, right? The hypes are the figment of imagination where there is a kernel of truth. I will go to the kernel of truth first, that what it is. All of these technologies are created by the people by observing the real problems that they have seen in society, right? The blockchain, distributed trust, right? Quantum, get rid of the semiconductor limitations of ones and zeros, right? Any technology that you take today was developed in a response to break free from the today's limitations. So all of them have a lot of things to offer to us. Fortunately, their early use cases which were picked up, some of them were controversial, and which resulted into the unnecessary hype. That means the technologies were not mature, but the promises were made. That means we can go to the moon, where we don't even know how to locate the moon. Forget about pointing, we don't know. So these are the kind of issues that has been happened. So first of all, if CSOs really want to understand that the problem that they want to solve, the technology is a ways and means, right? That is not the ultimate goal. I am sure that nobody wants to say that, hey, I am the first one to implement the quantum computing. No, they want to say, I have solved a problem of crunching and data at a large scale in real time. This is the problem. For that, quantum computing exists as a technology. So for me, the most important thing for the CSOs is to understand this capabilities of technologies today, not what is promised after the 5 years. Because for today's promise for this particular technology, there is an alternate technology which exists, which can deliver today. Having said that, they should also be prepared that what are their limitations today. So once we have this kernel of truth today, then we talk the next thing. Now, healthcare, she mentioned about the quantum computing and all of this thing. Today, in reality, across the borders, there are organizations who are collecting the encrypted data today. And they are waiting for quantum computer to be available so that they can hack it down the line, 10 years down the line, because the information is still valuable up to 25 years. This was the reason that US mandated that all of the critical thing has to be already go to the PQC. Now, this is the wake-up call. So this is just a one wake-up call. Right now for the DLT, there is another wake-up call, which is there. How are we going to tackle all of these issues? Because technology is the only, most likely the only solution that we have for our lot of challenges today. Be it, take any SDG 20 goals. If you don't see AI in front of it, I will go from this dais right now. For every SDG 20 goal, there are hundreds of organizations who are using technology to solve, because that's the only way. So emerging technologies are going to be truth, except that. This is the starting point. Now, how do we protect them? That is the next challenge. Deepfake, I'll tell you the scary scenario, which I was just discussing today only. You have a generative AI, which is able to generate a realistic looking pictures, videos, information. And now you have on the other side, our younger generation, the fragile minds, who have yet not developed a resilience in terms of discerning and information. Imagine presenting this narrative in front of them, the kind of damage that it is going to cause to us. So we need to be worried about that. A simple example, movies, everyone sees, right? We know that the movies have a rating system, U and A. In US, there's a PG-7, PG-13, and all of those rating systems are there with respect to the with all of this movie, right, which is a mass audience. So this only tells that you need to certain times really understand that what is at play and then deploy the measures appropriately. Technology is not always the case. Technology is one of the means. You need to fit in the puzzle, the people aspect, organizational aspects, and technology aspect. And if I just borrow what Mika said, international cooperation on top of that. Sectors also there. Every sector has a different demand. So I know that I have given a lengthy answer and I have gone around your keywords, but essentially my only point is that please figure it out whether this is the technology that you really want to use it or not first. And then the second point is that understand the risk and security concerns around that. And for that, you don't have to go far away. Universities like Amrita are the hotbed of the newest technologies. Come here and talk to madam. She will tell you that what are the issues are there in the DLT, what are the issues are there in the AI. Why do you have to go away? You don't even have to pay. They are more than happy to help. So these are the point of a dialogue. The second point is that the dialogue with the right stakeholders. And then understand and then do the cost benefit analysis and then take the measures. That's the 3 points that I will simply say.
Super. I think we have not even barely scratched the surface of this debate, but I think we have 10 minutes left, so let me just open this for the audience. If you have any question, please raise your hand, identify yourself, be brief in your question, and please identify also the panelists to whom the question is addressed. Anyone?
Okay, interesting panel. Thanks a lot for bringing in that diverse perspective. I could see very diverse perspective in unified tone. That's very interesting. One of the things that I'm clearly interested in knowing is what are the top 3 things that you consider as threat that students and regulators should pay immediate attention to? Top 3 things, any of you can answer this. I'm only looking at top 3 threats that regulators need to attend to, top 3 threats that students need to pay attention to.
We'll take maybe 2-3 questions together and then go. Sure. That gives you some chance to also think of. Okay, but if there is anyone else?
Sir, I have a question with security, sir. So if we increase the security of a system, for example, we have passwords in our phone, right? So if we keep a lengthy password, it makes our password more safer, less hackable in the sense. But does it, it increases the time we need to type in the password, it's more inconvenient. So how to deal with this? Like if you're increasing the security, there's a backside for it. Like there is a inconvenience that we have to face. So how do we deal with this? That's my question.
Friction between security and convenience. But for whom the question was?
To the panel members, sir.
Okay, to the panel. Okay. Anyone else? Otherwise, there's one more. Yeah, here.
Good evening, everyone. My question is regarding the capacity building in law enforcement, national security, because various data which APTs try to access are national security essential stuff. For example, there were some Chinese-based attacks on our national security infrastructure. Regularly, Pakistani try to breach our infrastructure. So it is not only here, but it's among every country. So what are the capacity building which countries must do for mitigating this?
Okay, so we'll come back to the audience. Yeah.
I will start with the last one because First of all, we all know, and let's say it again, we are losing on this race. The criminals and the bad guys are 10 steps ahead of us. They don't have a limit of law, budget, or a moral. They do whatever they want. And we, as a countries, sectorial organization, and people, first need to understand the situation. And second, there is a story that you cannot be the last one on the ships, on the tribe of the ships, because the lion catch the last one. So do something about it and improve your organization, understand the situation, and try to be in the middle. At the first, it's not so good recommendation because the lion can come from the front, but in the middle, I think it's a good idea. And for your question, because we are not winning the race, it's a lot of effort for law enforcement, regulator, countries, etc., to be there. It's a lot of effort, and I'm encourage each law enforcement agencies to be on the front line and fight it all time, because we cannot give up. We need to fight it all over the way. So there is no fast solution, but we need to go forward together, as we said.
So just to add to that, in the context of India specifically, you heard General Pant speak earlier today. So he's the National Cybersecurity Coordinator, but there are multiple organizations under him. And there are at least 2 that I know of that are dedicated to capacity building. So they have a variety of different programs. I'll talk about 2 that are publicly known. One is for people from the different central, I would say central government security forces. So it's your armed forces, the Navy, the Air Force, CISF, BSF, folks who are retiring from these. They have access to a program where they can upskill themselves and join cybersecurity roles, right? They receive very specific cybersecurity training, and it's one method that people are using to build that task force. Again, it's a drop in the ocean, but it's a start, right? That is one program. The other is through the HRD, or the Government of India, which is, you'll find there are a variety of different grants and scholarships that individual states as well as the center are awarding to students for cybersecurity education. There are also different hackathons that corporates sponsor, and all of this, the aim is to identify talent early and have the opportunity to mold that talent, grow that talent. So there are a number of different such programs that are occurring, and I would encourage you to go online and look at them. I will share with the university what I have as a list of publicly known sources, but I would encourage you to go online because there are a lot of these things that are coming up, right? To answer the first question, if I may, for students, and I'm saying this because, if I go back to how we studied and how we learned, right? It was a very unidirectional form of instruction. We were told or given a set of instructions and said, this is the right way to do X. And we nodded our heads, practiced it, and learnt that. Questioning was not really part of that process. And very few teachers actually encourage students to ask and kind of deviate from the normal course of instruction. But today that has changed. And I'm glad it has changed, because the more questions you ask, the better you understand something, right? So I would encourage you to ask questions. going back to the point of ethics, I think we need to empower students to ask the right questions so they can make a decision for themselves based on their moral compass. Because if they are always reliant on somebody else or someone else or something else to tell them what is right or what is wrong, then that also means that an entire swath of people can be influenced in a certain way without you ever even knowing about it. So always be curious, always ask questions, discern for yourself why something is right, why is it right for you, why should you do it. Of course, this doesn't mean you start asking why should we do our assignments. That is not what I mean. We leave that one alone for now. But the point was that, you will face, a multitude of experiences in your life. You must be able to take that experience and see what you learn from it and how you are growing as an individual, right? And for that, you must have your own kind of framework that you utilize. So for students, I feel the most important thing today is to help them build that framework. Not tell them this is the framework, but help them build it for themselves. Because if we are able to do that successfully, then we needn't worry. They'll do a much better job than any of us has done so far.
I think we should all have an opportunity to answer his questions. So I'll just summarize in like less than a minute.
I have a question, please. Can I interfere? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, I think the question was, what are the threats? One for regulators and the other for students. I think the three that I would say are: one, lack of consensus on lexicon that we use in security. That would be one of the threats I feel that the regulators should be thinking about. Second, lack of trust, how to really enforce trust. How do we really delve into that? The third would be really related to the cross-border regulations. I think that has been discussed here. Those are the three things that I feel are trust. And with regard to the students, I feel there are definitely, what is lacking in addition to what he said is that there's lack of right role models. They don't know who to look up to. And also, I think it relates to also not knowing what is right and wrong, especially in this age of AI and fake news and things like that. And the last threat that I see is really not having that hands-on learning, perhaps as an addition to the questioning, critical mindset that students should have. They also need to have a lot of hands-on learning. So.
Thank you. You want to add something?
I just want to add one thing. When he asked that, what are the biggest threat? There are only three things: human, human, and human.
Okay. Yeah. You want to add something?
I think all my panelists have summed it up very well. So just basically going back to, I think our reliance on digital communication has become so much, be it for communication, work from home, education. So we have essentially broadened the surface area for hackers to attack. So I think we should implement all that you've said and be in a safe environment in this digital space. Thank you.
I think it's very good recommendation. And after you finish it, go to backup. Backup your data.
Correct. We can take it because we are already thinking. But let me come back to the gentleman, and then that will be the last question, and then you can wrap up the panel.
Thank you. I am Joseph William, representing from an organization called Joseph Educational Trust. There are two parts of my question. The first part is that, if I am right, 2.5 decades ago, there was a globalization. And in terms of business, education, globalization helped a lot. In terms of technology was a boon for promoting business and education. But if you look into the present scenario, looking into the human relationship is becoming so fragile. Peace is lost in families. looking into the society, many, many suicides are happening. That's one part. The second part is that in the recent 10, 15 years, disasters have been happening frequently in terms of natural calamities, fire, tsunami, earthquake, and so many things. So how technology is going to help in such a way that we can stop this natural calamities? Thank you.
Anyone? Rajat?
I'm always happy to take a shot. So on the natural calamities front, I'll share a small anecdote. And this is back in 2002, 2003. I was working with an organization called Emerson. Emerson is a fairly large organization, and I was working with their engineering team. And although I was working on the security side, out of curiosity, I wanted to know what they were working on. And at that time, they were trying to more accurately predict the weather, right? Now, between then and now, we've come a long way. If you look at the predictive technologies that are available to us today to identify whether it be seismic movement, whether it be weather, whether it be tornadoes, whether it be tsunamis, right? There is much better information that is available today to help us. We can't stop the calamity, but we can help prep for it and minimize its impact to human life. So that is already, in my mind, I think it's happened. I don't know how much more it will continue to grow, but that much has already happened. On the first part of your question about, personal peace of mind or the fragility that exists in society, I think part of that is because of the pace of change. If you think about the entire lifetime of your grandparents and the change that they faced in their lifetime, and then you look at the next generation and the next generation and your own, the first thing you notice is how much changes and how quickly it changes. And while we all want more progress, we forget that that pace takes a toll on us, and not all of us are committed to tuning our mind, as somebody put it so well in the morning. So we need to be in a better place to tune our own minds, prepare ourselves, and be ready to accept the change that we want. And I think that would reduce the fragility that exists today in society. The other bit is, I think, because people are so busy, and that is partly due to the pace, we've forgotten to give each other time, to have a laugh, spend time with each other, simple things that, if I look back to my childhood, my parents, my grandparents, my several hundred relatives, everybody did, right? Which made my childhood wonderful. And I have several great memories which keep me more robust, more resilient, because I have all those memories, right? So we all need a bank of such memories, a reserve, and there are various ways to develop it. So these methods are nothing new. They've existed for hundreds of years, if not thousands. But we need to go back and practice those on a daily basis, find our own peace. The fragility will slowly start reducing.
Thank you, Rajat, so much. Your turn.
The second question about the calamity, and I want to give a very specific example on one of the projects that I have worked on. This is the project that we have worked on in the Europe, which is essentially the early prediction of calamity. Now, here is not about the natural, man-made, any kind of calamity. The problem which was thrown was again to the resilience kind of a thing, saying that how fast we can come back if something happens, or can we be prepared and minimize the impact of this particular calamity for both of this. And how the technology has helped is that there are sensors which are there for the weather data, then there are road traffic information, then there is a internet information, then there is a financial information. So the organization with which we worked, they built a data fusion model. It's not one single source, it's a multiple source. Human mind cannot comprehend that at that scale of data, but the machines can do it. So they just started like taking all of this various data, which we call it as a disparate data or the weak signals. And they put all of those weak signals in order to determine the kind of causality that if event is going to happen or not, and what kind of an event, and what would be the strength of those particular events. And based upon that, they had written an entire rule book, automated rule book, that how the system, the capacities, everything has to take up or down. One of the biggest problem is that lot of attackers have to succeed only once, or calamity have to only succeed once. The defenders have to succeed daily. It's like in cricket, right? The batsmen have to defend for each ball. The bowler only have to succeed once. Now in this kind of thing, the technology is the best case scenario. And this is where we have worked in, this is how the technology is actually changing for all of this kind of a calamity, which is also the security is part of that, the operational risk are part of that, the reality things which are happening. You would not believe that that particular model gave us an insight that if in this particular region, if the traffic has increased in this specific time zone, consider that the humans are going at certain location and there is possibility of a next thing happening. I am leaving out specific information from this thing because it's in a causality aspect, but it has prevented a huge, the monetary impact in the 3 months of the deployment of this particular project is close to a 12 million in terms of an adaptive responsibilities. You don't need always everything up, you cannot afford to have everything down. So when to get something up and when to get something down, that decision making was able to do it with this particular project. So this is what we have worked on. And securing these models against this, because now if somebody, imagine a state actor getting information that how this model works, and then start tweaking that, the poisoning it, right? The faking the information for this model and making the entire nation's capability to go haywire. So we worked on this particular project, and this is the kind of a reality that we live in behind the curtains.
Thank you so much. I think the most difficult or the most pleasing part for moderator is to say that we have run out of time. Okay, so but I want to thank the panelists for such wonderful and insightful conversation. So please give it a round of applause. Thank you.
So we're going to break for tea now. We were going to have the group photo, but we're postponing it.